What's going on, and welcome back to Eclipse Theory Games podcast. We review the latest in gaming news, indie reviews, and everything else under the sun. My name is Kendall, and I'm here with my two co-hosts, Carl. What's going on, brother?
Not much. Everybody knows me. I'm Carl, aka Hernandez. I'm not sure why aka my last name, but it felt right.
You know what? It worked for today only. Never again. I'm checking you on that, but today I'll allow it. But got my man James back in the building. What's good, James? Same old, same old. It's a random day in the middle of September. We are back again though, but it is a special occasion because we're back with a new episode. It's been a little while. Had to deal with some internal things, some external things, but dropping again, and we kind of have a big one to go through. Like we were saying off air, man, I don't know if it's going to be a part two, part one and part two sort of situation, but we're going to try and do our recap of the consoles today. So, we've been going through our console retrospective, trying to get a whole tier list of like all the consoles going, and everybody's missed some episodes, like except for me. I'm hosting all these fucking episodes, but yeah, for the most part, we've all had our moments of like missing episodes. Stuff happens, you know what I mean? So we got a lot of stuff to kind of recap. And I don't know if I have the accurate list. I tried to go through each video and look at who was in the videos. I've been alerted that I was wrong about one already, so clearly I might not have all all the right rankings up here. But we're gonna try to go through like from the bottom, from the first ones that we did, and just kind of knock out a ranking for each one. So I don't know, man. You guys ready to get started with this? Because we got a task ahead of us.
Let's do it.
So to begin, we're going to kind of start at the very beginning. I know we started with the Genesis. Carl, I think you were the only one that wasn't there. James, you were there for the beginning. So if you're not familiar, we go through what?
I was left at the pun because you said start with the Genesis at the very beginning. It's punny. I'm sorry.
I can't express my disappointment with myself for not realizing that I even said that just now. Like that's gonna haunt me for a little while, Carl. It really is. But so we're starting with the Genesis. Yeah, you weren't on that one. So if you guys aren't familiar with the way we do our rankings, we go through a list of 5 categories. It is a console, controller, games, graphics, and impact. And we're just gonna kind of rattle through these if we can, you know what I mean? So Carl, give us your breakdown of the Genesis.
All right. Breakdown for the Genesis. I wish I had that gift right now, the Australian dancer. But let me break down for you. But the Genesis overall was a fantastic console. Like the slogan says, like it does what Nintendo don't. Like the graphics at the time was better than the NES. It had one of the best mascots, Sonic, and amazing cast of other games like from Vector Man to even Earthworm Jim, which is also on the Super Nintendo, but I always played on the Genesis. So the gaming library for the Genesis was actually it even had Street Fighter 2. Like it had a lot of good games on there. The gaming library for the Genesis was top tier.
So what would you rank that out of 10?
The library is a solid 8.
Okay.
For games. They shared a lot with Nintendo, but even their exclusives like Shinobu, they were fire. Jumping up to the controller. The controller was a weird boomerang shape. It felt comfortable in your hands, but I don't know, like the C button just felt like I think it was the controller didn't even have C buttons, no one have C sticks, but that was like the first and only controller to have a C button. But in a time where I get it was Shopee Revolutionary and then the select buttons up there, but I'm gonna give the controller it was comfortable, but it was wide. If that makes sense, and kind of like I'll give it the controller a 7 for the controller. Like it wasn't a bad controller, but it was just like an odd controller. And then later on they got crazy with it, but we're not gonna go into that kind of depth. Console. Now, the console was sleek. It was small in the beginning, but my biggest problem, this was all consoles at this time, was that damn power brick. I can't stand those things. Don't know why they made them like that. It takes up too much space as a fire hazard, in my opinion. I don't care what no one says.
Talked about
So
this with the Wii. So
yes, I hate all large power bricks. Because of that, that's an automatic 2-point deduction. the,
it's fair.
the Sega Genesis gets a 7 as a console design because of that power brick. And it was game console or Impact to 10. It came out
Okay.
and it hit like it came right for the king. It came like yo, like we see what you do, Nintendo, and we say we're better, and they just like that's ballsy in general. And like the commercials are always fire. Like I said, the catchphrase was we do what Nintendo. It's catchy as hell. I'm still talking about this today. 10 for Impact.
Not mad at that. One category you missed is graphics. What would you get a graphics?
Oh, graphics for the time being, 16 bits, 10. They crushed the competition. It's revolutionary. Nothing was literally did what it did at the time until Super
Yeah,
Nintendo came out.
yeah. And then Super Nintendo did a lot of crazy things. People forget how well we're gonna talk about that in a second. But people forget, how that hit with Donkey
Yeah,
Kong and whatnot. Like those graphics are crazy.
it was amazing. So just like go back and look at Mario Bros. And then look at Sonic. Like the graphics is not a comparison.
Fair. Okay. I'm not mad at that. So to recap, console got a 7, controller got a 7, games got an 8, graphics got a 10, and Impact got a 10. So that brings you up to a 42 for the Genesis. 42 out of 50 score. Keep track of everything as we go, man. I got an Excel spreadsheet open up right here. So like you said, James, you were on the Super Nintendo episode, so you have a score for that one already.
I think
So
oh, I think
I,
so. I might have to do it again. I don't remember.
okay,
I'm
I mean,
not gonna lie to you. I
listen,
don't remember.
I feel like I remember you not being on that one, so we'll do it again. Fuck it, we just did call James. Give us your breakdown for the Super Nintendo.
Shoot, I guess we can start with games. I'll get out of 10. I mean, I feel like that's a very easy answer. Just 10. I mean, you had a lot of games at that time. Donkey Kong, just you keep going. Like I said, and actually it was some games that like I said, like they were actually really hard. Like motherfucking like people don't understand that damn Lion King game, like fucking the hardest game I've ever played in my goddamn life.
That's absolute facts.
Like I just can't wait to be king was like, why can't I finish this? It's yeah.
Yes.
But like yeah, just the games like I just had a lot of games for the Super Nintendo, and I just remember like not being like bored because I knew I could play so much different things at the time. Like one of my favorite games at the time was the Batman Forever game. The movie might have been terrible, but the game was actually fire.
Man, we won't talk enough about how that was like a licensed game renaissance.
Yeah, like that
crazy.
game was fire. The movie was terrible, but we won't go on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so definitely games 10. The console itself, I'll give the console itself I'll give it an 8.5.
Okay.
Felt like it was a good console, small, it was gray, purple, a little different, popped out a bit. The only issue that I would say is that if that joint got some dust in it, boy, he was in for hurt. Boy, I licked so many cartridges. I like bang so many cartridges just so that joint will work. Like you just don't understand.
Call that practice. Look at the cartridges. I'm sorry. I'll behave.
Controller,
right.
I'll give a controller. I'll give a controller a 9. It felt good in your hand. I felt like it was a really good controller. Like in your hand, it just felt nice. Like it didn't feel out of place. The buttons were all placed appropriately for my hands. It was just like I felt like anybody could pick up that controller and they would be fine. So I'll get a controller now. Like graphics like I said, graphics at 10. I mean, like you said, like I feel like Carl said, like Nintendo and Sega was like battling each other for a while, like until Sony said hello. But I felt like for the longest, like Nintendo would be like, all right, we dropped this, and then Sega was like, oh, we got the Genesis, and then he was like, oh, we got Super Nintendo, and then they was like, okay, well, we're gonna drop the Dreamcast. So it was kind of like they were just going back and forth. Like, yeah, I'm a one of you. So yeah, I'll give graphic Nintendo.
Okay. And then Impact, final category.
Impact, like I said, I'll give Impact a 10. I mean, like I said, the Super Nintendo spearheaded, I think, like you said, just like I was talking about earlier, just the competition spearheaded people trying to be better and innovate more, and do more, because they was like, hey, I want my console to be, better. So then, like I said, it spearheaded Sega making a Dreamcast, which made, PlayStation say, hey, I'm going to drop the PlayStation 1, and, so on and so forth. So I think, like, if you didn't have those competition of saying, like, hey, like, I want to drop something even better, like, I don't think we would be where we at now.
Yeah, I had a feeling that I shouldn't even ask for Impact. I should have just put down a 10 because it's the Super Nintendo. It'd be like that. But don't let me sway your vote, though, Carl. Carl, you also have to do Super Nintendo. So go ahead and give us your rundown of that console.
Super Nintendo, let's do it. Super Nintendo console for me is a fantastic design, very simplistic. I love the fact that it has 3 buttons on the top. It has the power button, the reset button, and the eject button. And it just feels good to push the eject button. You have to go click. Like I said, it's not too big. You can just put it in a backpack if you want to take it somewhere. But my power brick issues. So
all the way back to the Super Nintendo. Damn.
Yeah, the bricks they be here. So it gets an 8 for design, just for that one reason.
Okay.
I love everything about it, but them bricks, those are not. Oh, I can't stand them. Okay. As for controller, it had a amazing controller. It fit super duper comfortably in your hand. I love the 4 button faces it has, the XAYB, XAB, XY, yeah. And then it had the top trigger buttons as well. I feel like I got the alphabet
you
wrong.
got them right, but it's just interesting to study how people's brains work. Because, like, why did you go in that order? Like, it's like you just say A, B, and X, Y. I mean, never mind. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to say.
I was going across like that instead of that way.
No, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But
and then you got the L and R buttons at the top as well, and the D-pad just felt smooth, very, very, very comfortable fit. Like it also had a similar boomerang shape, but not as wide as the Sega Genesis, which could have been a shot at them because it fit more comfortably in my hands. At least I don't have the biggest hands, and it felt good. So the controller, I give that that's an 8 as well. A solid 8 for the controller design. Next is the games category. Games category for Super Nintendo. Yeah, games from Super Nintendo are amazing. They are fantastic. The games are a 10. You got the Mega Man X series on Super Nintendo. 1, 2, and 3. Like that on itself. Don't even start on Super Mario World. You got Donkey Kong Country. Once again, I'll bring up Earthworm Jim again. He was also Super Nintendo. You had some of the Power Ranger games, beat 'em ups, that were fire on there. Mario Kart was on the Super Nintendo. So if y'all think the Super Nintendo catalog wasn't good, then you need to bump your head. So game catalog is 10. Graphics, like I said, now at this point, so I gave Genesis a 10 because it's super stepped up. I'm not gonna give the Super Nintendo a 10 because now it's like an actual race between the two, and they're gonna keep improving upon each other. For its time, the graphics were great, but it was nothing like, oh my god, first time revolutionary. And it was good, but it didn't blow the Genesis out the water with its graphics.
I used the same type of logic when I was doing graphics.
Yeah, but they're good graphics though. Yeah. So graphics gets an 8. Now for Impact, boy, that Super Nintendo one of the best consoles that ever came out. I tell you.
I was about to say I already watched the score. It's fine.
Yeah, man, that Impact 10 for that Super Nintendo. So that's what I'm giving the SNES, the SNES.
Okay.
I forgot to mention Earthbound was also an amazing game for Super Nintendo. and they had a Chrono Trigger. I can go on and on about the amazing Mario RPG. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
I rest. I surrender.
Adjourn. Yeah, no, you're meeting adjourned or whatever. But
Mhm.
okay, so Carl, you gave console an 8, controller an 8, graphics also got an 8. Games got a 10, impact got a 10. My brain is farting right now, so gotta give me a second to add all that up. We'll run through it all at the end of it. I'm not gonna do this in real time because then we're just gonna like go cross-eyed trying to host a podcast. But okay, nice. I'm not mad at that. I also want to point out, one, you guys make great points about the controller, Carl, in that like it is also like that shape, but it's kind of like bone shaped almost. Like
Mhm.
it's a for old school controllers, the Super Nintendo is like the 360 controller to me. Like that's like the perfect shape. Like that's how you want it to be. And then James, I wanted to give you props for having your 0.5s. I wish I 0.5'd my rankings because my shit be tied up so much, and I'm like, damn. I really missed the opportunity. um, okay, so got through those. Now we kind of moving up a generation. You guys both actually missed the PS1 episode. So you know what? I'll leave the floor open. Whoever wants to start, give us your rundown of the PS1. This is a fire. I'm gonna judge you for this. Just know that. I'm throwing that out there.
Well, I'll start and say controller for PS1. I'll give it a 7. And the only reason why I'll do that is because that was like the lightest controller I think I've ever held in my life.
Yeah.
It felt like it had no battery. It felt like it had like it didn't feel like a controller to me. It just felt weird. And I don't know why, but it didn't feel real.
It's like it was hollow inside.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah, it was like it didn't have a soul. Like my controller didn't have a soul. So I have to give the controller a 7.
Okay. I'm not mad at that, honestly. We don't actually have to go down the list if we don't want to. We can kind of bounce back and forth. So, Carl, do you agree?
Okay, yeah.
Was the controller super mid?
Yes, I actually agree with that.
Okay.
The controller, first of all, the color is bland. I know the whole system's great, his whole theme is great, but that's a boring ass looking ass controller. Gray with black buttons. That shit is not. I know the Super Nintendo was gray and black buttons. Well, gray was great, but at least the buttons had color, had like purple and light purple and shit.
Yeah, but we can't even compare that. You know.
Yeah. That PlayStation 1 controller, it was boring. It's light.
That's interesting.
And like it introduced the L2 and R2s, which is cool, and they're very functional and useful buttons. But like it was light and it was in your hands. I give it a 7. It was nothing spectacular in my opinion about it.
Okay, I'm not mad. Everyone is entitled to their opinions. But I would argue that at that time, every console was like black, and that the gray was kind of like coming out with something that was exciting. You know what I mean? I never looked at it that way. In fact, like when like PS4s and stuff come out in that PlayStation 1 gray, I'm always like that. It looks even more fire to me. But
I see. I wanted to quick argue because Super Nintendo was gray, and it was gray, and it was purple.
It looked amazing.
Purple buttons. Yeah. It looked good. Yeah. So like, their gray wasn't revolutionary in my opinion.
Well, no, it wasn't. But like, it was. That was also different as hell. Like, I feel like the basic was black, and PlayStation kind of like. I feel like they kind of owned that aesthetic. Like their look was kind of different on your nightstand or whatever.
All I'm gonna say is no one talked about the second man on the moon, Buzz Aldrin. Everybody knows Neil Armstrong though. So Nintendo great first.
He got a Disney character named after him, Carl. Come on, man. That's something. It's amazing. All right, so how are we feeling about the console as far as PS1 design and like function?
Design basic. It's a rectangle. I mean, there's nothing special about it. I do like that the button, the eject button, opens the top. Although that was cool, the little disk drive. That's dope. But like, I also feel like they got that from the Sega CD or Sega Saturn. So
the PS1 wasn't that before the Sega Saturn?
No, the Sega Saturn came out. Sega CD came out first. Yeah.
Okay,
and
fair.
Then
maybe I forgot because nobody fucking had one.
Yeah, they died. So all they did was take their idea and say we're gonna do it, and it was cool. It pops open, and it also had 3 buttons. The reset button was crazy small for some reason. And then you had your fat ass power button and your fat ass eject button. But
Interesting. Okay.
so like it was nothing special about its design. It looked kind of like the color. I wasn't a big fan of the color. The design is a rectangle, and the buttons aren't all symmetrical. So for that, I'm gonna give the console design 7. I mean, oh no,
Okay.
no, it gets a 6. That shit's ugly. I'm sorry, it's 6. It's a 6.
Okay. Fair. I love the PS1 design. That's interesting. James, do you agree? Is it ass?
I won't say it's ass. I'll give it a 7.5.
Okay.
But
Okay.
my biggest issue with that system wasn't its design; it was the stuff inside of the system. So, like the one, if you moved that system while you was playing it, your shit was done. It got that ring
That's
around
facts.
it. Couldn't play it.
Yeah.
It was done deal.
Yeah. I'm scared to move my PS5. I'm not gonna hold you, but I feel you.
2, I remember having my PS1 and the little rubber band thing that you actually stick the CD on wouldn't pop back on. So then the CD wouldn't stay. I was just like, what the fuck? And then the little lens, I think my cousin touched it and it was dirty and it would read certain games and not certain games. I was just like, bro, I can't. This is the most fragile system I think I've ever had in my life.
I forgot about that.
So I would just, from that aspect, I just felt like it was a lot of stuff that, I mean, again, you're getting these systems to kids. Kids are probably going to touch shit that they're not supposed to touch, So I feel like you should have made it so those things were hidden more so they couldn't affect like what happened to my system. So that's why I'll give it a 7.
Okay. I mean, I'm not mad. I feel like, one of my favorite childhood friends getting jumped right now, but we'll let y'all rock, you know what I mean? 6s and 7s aren't the end of the world, but let's see how we feel about the games library for the PS1.
Oh, that's a 10.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, I just remember playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater for like hours.
Yes.
I had Final Fantasy 7, of course, and it was so funny. I had no memory card, so I just left my PlayStation on forever. And I remember my grandma turning that joint off, and I almost committed suicide as a young kid. I mean, yeah, you had a lot of like great games. I mean, you had the first ever Metal Gear. One of my favorite games was the Legacy of Kain, Gold Reaver. I mean, you had a lot of. Also, I spent many times playing SmackDown, WWE SmackDown. I mean, like the PS1 like had a lot of like great games that I just spent a lot of time like playing. And again, I spent a lot of time playing those games with no memory card. I'll never do that in this day and age. But a lot of those games, like I spent a lot of time playing. Oh, and then you can't forget about Papa Rapper. I love that game.
God, yes. Thank you. Needs to be mentioned every time this conversation comes up.
No.
Okay, Carl. How you feel?
For me, see, this is where it picks up at now. So the PS1 is that ugly chick, but she got a beautiful personality. That game library gets a 10, bro. Like there's so many good games on that day. Like Lyles already mentioned, one of my all-time favorites, the Metal Gear. But you got Persona 1 and 2, the duology on there as well that people don't talk about enough. Ancient Sin and Eternal Punishment. Those games are fire. You had don't even start on all of the Final Fantasy 7 and 8 is on there, which no one talks about 8 a lot. 8's also really fire. Like and in the racing game, you had Jet Moto. That's a racing game with jet skis, and it was fire.
That was my shit.
Amazing.
I don't bring up Jet Moto because I can't verify that that's a good game. I just know I love that game.
I love it. I don't know. My young son was on a water ski just having the greatest time. I'm pretty sure I'm making play that shit now. Who knows? It might be ass.
Listen,
but at the time when I was playing it, that shit.
We're unanimous. We all in agreement, so we good.
and you had those really obscure games too. I don't want to say this game because you probably thinking of it, but I'm just gonna throw it out there. The Cube, Intelligence. I'm just saying.
Thank you. y'all both hit on some of the games that I feel like don't get enough love. I mean, Parappa gets love, you know what I mean? But Intelligence Cube, bro, go play that game and tell me why that soundtrack needed to go that fucking crazy. Just it's on PS. I'm serious. I'm dead ass. Just turn it on, play like one level, and just like it's like a movie compo. Anyway, I get it. I get it though.
And
Also, it also had all the Resident Evil games, and I think those were the first time me playing a game, and it's literally scaring me to death. I did not play that game at night. I only had to play that game during the day. I couldn't play it at night.
Resident Evil scared you and made you laugh. You be scared of zombies, but you laughing at a Jill sandwich because it's terrible ass dialogue.
That's the beauty of Resident Evil.
Chrono Cross was on PS1 too.
I do want to point out one more thing with the PS1 as well. I think the PS1 was the introduction of demo disc that was like a revolutionary thing.
I've never thought about that, but I mean,
I used to get the demo disc from Pizza Hut.
Yeah, or like absolutely, or like PlayStation Magazine joints and stuff like that. And that was kind of PS2 era, but yeah, that might have been.
Oh, also Tekken 3. I can't.
We can't do that because we're gonna be here all day. Like,
yeah, point. So it's crazy. It's a 10 for the games.
Yeah, Legend of Dragon. But okay, we're gonna move on now. But all right, so graphics. What do you guys think about the PS1's graphics?
I'll jump on this one first. Like now we're in a new era. We're moved from the 2D to like good 3D because like Sega tried it and it was like no bunch of shit. But so for graphics for its time, we had the Tomb Raider. Everybody was trying to zoom up when she was underwater for a reason. Them graphics for its time gets a 10.
Okay.
For its time.
I completely understand. Because that was like a huge generational jump.
Yes.
Okay. James, do you agree?
I'll give it a 9.
Okay. Conservative.
Someone's petty.
I mean, I feel like it's very tricky to go back and retrospectively rank the graphics like this because we do have to look at like, okay, Sony went from nothing to this. Like, you know what I mean? Sony was about to bring this to Nintendo, like, hey, we can bring y'all some new shit. But like graphics went from like pixels and everything. And I always argue this about Final Fantasy VII. Like the way that game looks is how I would picture pixelated graphics looking if you made that 3D, like 1-to-1 direct translation to 3D. So yeah.
I'm gonna try to change James's mind right fast on the graphics. I know he gave it a 9, but I'm gonna name 2 games that he's named. Yes, you have your Final Fantasy, which is all pixelated, it still looks good. But look at Parappa or the Rapper. That game looks beautiful in its art design and its art style, and that's all powered by the PS1.
It is, but the only reason why I'm giving it a 9 is because, again, I still remember how Metal Gear Solid looked on GameCube and it on PlayStation.
But that's different. That's nowhere near to compare. You can't compare the two.
It can be only because remember the GameCube was never supposed to be looked at as that powerful system.
But the GameCube had better graphics than the
PS2. That was a remake specifically to upgrade the look of that game. So I don't feel like that's a comparison.
I'm just look. A 9 ain't that far from a 10.
It's not. I'm not arguing.
like if y'all saw a girl outside and y'all said she was a 9, you saw a 10, you'd be like, I mean, she's still bad.
Right. Like, what am I nitpicking for? Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna let your 9 stand. I'm sorry, Carl. Your argument was rejected, but you tried. You gave it a valiant effort. We're gonna probably end up making this a part 1, part 2 sort of situation because we on a time limit, I know, and we're coming to a close, and we've not got through everything. So we're gonna end this one with impact for the PS1. What would you guys give the PS1's impact?
So 10. Now this is why I differ. I give it a 9. It did shake up the industry, and it did get everybody on notice to try to get into the 3D world, but I don't know. They were a new brand, and I don't know. Sony was known for TVs and washing machines and stuff. Like say, people bought it and it was very fun, but I just don't feel like it had the same games have been out for a while, at this point. And when it dropped, like it had a significant impact, but nothing like how the Genesis, the Super Nintendo's fight was. Now they're like the third brand soda. They're the RC at the games at this point. They're gonna become Coke eventually, and then the roles are gonna shift. But right now they're the RC. People are still talking about Sega and Nintendo at this time for more.
Fair. They were definitely, that was the Pepsi and Coke, so I can't argue with that disrespectful ass RC comparison.
RC's delicious. I'm just saying.
All right. Okay.
RC Cola's good.
I don't know.
RC Cola's good.
RC Cola's fine and a damn lunchable or whatever. But that's where I get it. Okay. It's not getting purchased in box form, all right. Respectfully. No disrespect, whoever runs RC Cola over there, But
I just feel like I have to give it a 10 just because of when you're saying impact, sometimes impact means the future. So, if it wasn't for some of these games being brought out, we wouldn't have some of the other stuff that we have now. Also, it started some of the early icons in like Spyro, in like Papa Rapper. And, a lot of those people, became icons later on in PlayStation. So without the PlayStation 1, there would be none of those. So I feel like if you're doing that, you have to have its impact because those built on to, Metal Gear Solid 1 built on to Metal Gear Solid 4.
I was about to bring up Metal Gear. Like, Carl, how dare you? Let your phone text message sound go off and tell me the PS1's impact. Right?
Okay, you know what? I didn't even think about. No, I'm gonna raise my score up to a 10. For the fact that it's not the thing you said, but you made me think about something else that they did that was revolutionary to the console industry. The introduction of the memory card and the multi-tap. That was the first time you could play games like SmackDown and whatnot and have more than just two people on the console at a time. And then pretty soon, a few consoles ahead of time, 4 ports are going to be the new standard at some point because of it. So I am going to adjust my score to a 10 for impact for those 2 reasons alone.
Right. PS1 had Crash Racing. Okay.
Thanks.
2, also you got to think also those games that they introduced also became movies. I mean, yeah, Resident Evil isn't great movies, but impact, went on for them to do other stuff. Now that so I have to give it more than just a 9 because if it would have failed, then we wouldn't have never got 2, 3, and everything else.
Yeah, I would say I agree with you changing the score, just off the strength of the same arguments you made for Sega with Nintendo. Like they came out and fought the same opponent after they had beaten Sega. You know what I mean? So they were strengthened. So yeah, I respect it. I would have respected the 9, but I think it's definitely a 10 for just jumping out into the fray.
It jumped in the deep end. It didn't know how to swim and said we're gonna go on 12 feet now.
Yep, absolutely. It's stupid to do that. Don't do that, kids at home. But for Sony, 10 out of 10. Great dive, Sony. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this one up for now, man. I know we have a lot to go over. There's a lot that y'all wasn't on. Y'all need to be on more episodes. But we're gonna make sure we make that happen, and we're gonna come back for a part 2 to this roundup. But until next time, man, we'll bring this to a close. I'm Kendall. This has been James and Carl, and make sure you guys keep gaming. Take care.